Well, good morning, and grace and peace to each one. It's been, wonderful to be here already. I really enjoyed our Sunday school discussion, and just excited about God's Word and what He has for us. This morning I would title my message, "What About Him?" And maybe to begin with, I would like to have, I'm going to need 3 volunteers from you. And so if I could have maybe one at a time, let's do one volunteer at a time. If I could just have you raise your hand, and for clarification, the reward will be greater than the effort expended on your part, I think. So can I have a volunteer? Anyone? All right, Lorraine. Okay. So you can just stay there. That's fine. Lorraine, I'm gonna hire you for let's say a couple hours this week, and we need to agree on a price. And so I would like for you to clean my trucks this week and detail my trucks. It's going to take probably 3 or 4 hours, and so I need you to agree on the price that I offer you. I'm gonna offer you 25 cents. Is that fair? Thank you for agreeing. Okay, so 1/4. All right, so can I have a second volunteer? All right, Dallas. All right, would you agree with me to, let's say, spend 10 minutes thinking about God this week, and I'll pay you what's fair. Does that work? Okay, so Dallas has agreed to spend 10 minutes of his time thinking about God, and he doesn't know what I'll end up paying him. And one more volunteer. All right, Ethan. So do you mind maybe just turn to the person next to you and smiling, and I'll pay you what that's worth. Does that work? Okay. All right. So 3 of you earn 25 cents. All right, so Lorraine and all humanity, I want you to tell me how that makes you feel. You don't. It doesn't have to be a sanctified response. Just tell me. Just tell me what you think of that. Okay. All right. And I think we all understand that, right? Okay. So, and in all fairness, I would pay Lorraine probably it's probably worth more like $250 instead of 25 cents. So maybe our illustration is a little bit out of proportion. Maybe what I would pay him for doing that, and I'm not asking him to detail my trucks, and Dallas, I think you should think about God for 10 minutes this week for sure. But so this to illustrate, and I guess I'm going to tell you that this is actually a biblical. There's nothing wrong with what I did there, right? There's actually a story in the Bible that has this same idea. So 3 people doing 3 different things, and they're getting paid the same amount. Let's go to Matthew 20. So this morning I want to look a little bit at our accountability to God. And I guess how we're going to look at it is going to be a little bit separate from maybe our accountability to each other, right? We, especially as a church, we realize that there needs to be accountability between us, right? We hold each other accountable. We help each other to follow God, right? And so I'm not discounting that at all. But I think there's something that comes actually before that. There's something else that has to be in place before we are accountable or responsible as a group to each other, right? So Matthew 20, we're going to read this story. Matthew 20, verse 1. For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. Now when he had agreed with the laborers for a denarius a day, he sent them into his vineyard, and he went out about the third hour and saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and said to them, You also go into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right I will give you. So they went. Again he went out about the sixth and the ninth hour, and did likewise. And about the 11th hour he went out and found others standing idle, and said to them, Why have you been standing here idle all day? They said to him, Because no one hired us. He said to them, You also go into the vineyard, and whatever is right you will receive. So when evening had come, the owner of the vineyard said to his steward, Call the laborers and give them their wages, beginning with the last to the first. And when those came who were hired about the 11th hour, they each received a denarius. But when the first came, they supposed that they would receive more, and they likewise received each a denarius. And when they had received it, they complained against the landowner, saying, These last men have worked only 1 hour, and you made them equal to us, who have borne the burden and the heat of the day. But he answered one of them and said, Friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? Take what is yours and go your way. I wish to give to this last man the same as to you. Is it not lawful for me to do what I wish with my own things? Or is your eye evil because I am good? So the last will be first, and the first last. For many are called, but few chosen. All right, so kind of like the illustration that we did, in this case, Larray could have told me, well, that's really not fair. But I could tell him that, well, we agreed on a price, and you said that you would do that for 25 cents, and that's what you get. And the landowner in this case, he responds to the people that complain about the unfairness of this with, so first of all, we agreed on a price. You agreed to do this for a denarius a day. Are you jealous, or is your eye evil? Do you have a problem with this because you resent that I'm generous to these other people? And so this is kind of in the physical sense, of course, we understand that it just really doesn't look fair, right? And it's maybe it's really just not fair. But somehow Jesus is trying to drive a point home here that, okay, so Jesus is Lord, right? We believe that Jesus is Lord. Like we talked about last Sunday, God is greater than I am. And as Lord, Jesus decides what my reward is, right? He decides in a lot of ways, probably even, many details about my life. So God is sovereign, and God has control over what happens to me. And I think sometimes when we start to look at maybe the reward or the way others, maybe the things they have or what they do, we think it's not fair. But Jesus is Lord, right? And so it doesn't have to be fair, I guess, in our standards. All right, so then I'd like to think a little bit about Peter. And this probably already came to your mind, but the story about Peter, he also had something happen to him that he didn't think was very fair. All right, so as we know, Peter was probably the most outspoken of the disciples, and he, put his foot in his mouth numerous times, got himself in trouble, had a high, I guess, he thought that he would stand with Jesus, and Jesus even said some really, I guess, nice things about Peter. He told Peter that. So Peter, when he made this great statement about Jesus being the Messiah, Jesus agreed with that, and he said, that's right. And upon this confession, upon this rock I will build my church. But then we all know the story. Peter let Jesus down, right? So Peter, when the heat was up and Jesus was at trial, Jesus had told him that okay, so I guess backing up just a little bit before, Jesus told Peter, Satan has asked to sift you as wheat. And Jesus tells him, basically alludes to the fact that he will fail. But he says, when you're restored, or when you come back to me, strengthen your brethren. Okay, so we know the story that Peter actually, contrary to what he thought he would do under pressure, he actually just really denied Jesus 3 times, just like Jesus prophesied. And that brings us to John 21. So this was Jesus kind of dealing with Peter about, seems to be kind of dealing with him on his weaknesses, his past failures, and he wanted a commitment out of Peter. And we could maybe liken this to, all of us have a calling, right? You've been called by God, I've been called by God. And in some ways, generally, we're called to the same thing. We're called to follow Jesus. But then, specifically, you're called to things that I'm not. I'm called to things that you're not. And that's okay. That's actually the way it's supposed to be. Jesus is Lord, and he's Lord of our lives. Not only collectively, but also individually. First of all, individually, I would say. Verse 15 of John 21, so when they had eaten breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these? And in my mind, I still don't know if he's talking about the fish or if he's talking about the other people, his friends there. Because Peter had just gone out fishing. They had decided they were tired of waiting around. They went out fishing for the night, and they hadn't caught anything. Jesus came along, worked a miracle. They caught a lot of fish. So Jesus asked him, Peter, do you love me more than these? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, feed my lambs. He said to him again a second time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, tend my sheep. He said to him the third time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? Peter was grieved because he said to him the third time, do you love me? And I don't know, I think there's a lot of speculation. We kind of think of this in like it's kind of a parallel to the 3 times that Peter denied Jesus, right? And whether that's for sure the case or not, or what Jesus was getting at, somehow Peter was grieved that Jesus had asked him 3 times, do you love me? And probably thinking back to his failure and a lot of guilt about that. So he was grieved when Jesus asked him 3 times in a row, do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. And just like Jesus did with Peter here, I think God knows you really personally, right? God knows us. He knows our weaknesses. He knows the things that we've done in the past and the things that we're ashamed of. He also knows specifically what he wants us to do. For Peter, it seems like it was leading the church, right? It was feeding Jesus lambs. And so that it seems like Jesus is really specifically calling Peter to something. He has a specific calling, right? So Jesus is able to put his finger on the things that are wrong in your life, also on maybe what he knows you're capable of doing in the future. And so Jesus does that for us personally. Most assuredly I say to you, reading on in verse 18, when you were younger, you girded yourself and walked where you wished, but when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will gird you and carry you where you do not wish. This he spoke, signifying by what death he would glorify God. And when he had spoken this, he said to him, follow me. Okay, so again, we're all called to follow Christ, right? Personally. Christ's call on my life is very personal. Like I said, it doesn't negate this thing that we have of Christian community, but God's call on my life needs to be something that I take very seriously and follow God where he leads me. Then Peter, turning around, saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following, who also had leaned on his breast at the supper, and said, Lord, who is the one who betrays you? That was John, right? Peter, seeing him, said to Jesus,